generative course, generative workshop, and it's entitled Haunted Works, Haunted Words. I don't know if they're seeing this on the screens just yet, but it was inspired by this poem by Emily Dickinson, and it goes like this. One need not be a chamber to be haunted. One need not be a chamber to be haunted. One need not be a house. The brain has corridors surpassing material place. Far safer of a midnight meeting, external ghost than an interior confronting that cooler host. Far safer through an abbey gallop, the stones a chase than moonless. One's a self encounter in a lonesome place. Our self behind ourself concealed should startle most. Assassin hid in our apartment be horror's least. The prudent carries a revolver. He bolts the door, overlooking a superior specter more near. I dig that poem because it's sort of Emily talking about haunting and how we are haunted and what haunts us. And the idea for this, this particular workshop is exploring how it is that we are haunted, what haunts us, what are the things that haunt us in our lives. And the thing that I sort of quite simply went back to is that, well, we're haunted through our senses. How we experience a haunting is through the sensory planes, right? You know, if you ever see Ghost Hunters, has anyone ever watched like Ghost Hunters New England, those sorts of things? You know what I'm talking about? They're so terrible and tacky. I love them. But like the ways in which they access the supernatural are always through some kind of medium of perception, right? It's the green camera, right? The green filtered out camera, or it's the spirit box with a voice that talks back to you. You see things, you hear things, you smell things, you're touched, right? And so we experience being haunted through our bodies, right? Through the corporeal. And so, as I say here, we experience being haunted through our senses. The way we see something grants a particular kind of authority for us, having seen something. I saw the Taylor Swift Eras Tour on film. My wife is still bothering me about tickets, but I'm like, I don't have that kind of money. I'm a poet. And let me tell you, I know some things about this whole endeavor. Anyway, one of the senses that I think is quite haunted is the sense of smell, right? For example, you know a place based on how it smells. You experience a place and it has a particular type of vibrancy. My hometown of Ontario, Oregon, where I grew up, had on the banks of the Snake River an Ora-Ida factory. You know Ora-Ida, which makes basically potatoes and those sorts of things. Well, it smelled constantly of boiled potatoes in my hometown. And so when I think about that, or when I experience that in my life, I'm always sort of taken back to that place where I started, where I grew up, the banks of the Snake River. So there are so many ways that we are tied to our senses, that we are haunted by things, and that we perceive things through our bodies. Hauntings often come with also an emotional experience that's attached to it. Oftentimes, has anyone seen The Haunting of Hill House? Yes, you know what I'm talking about? So that particular show is really remarkable because I watch a lot of TV, as you can see. That particular show is extraordinary because all of these characters are haunted and they experience it in various ways, but essentially haunting is about the personal, right? It is about the personal, whether that be trauma or something else. So I want you to pull out something to write with, and I'm going to give you a couple of exercises right from. Okay. Everybody needs to write. I'm going to be watching you. I'm up here on the dais, and I can watch. I can see you all. Even you folks on the internet and the interwebs, I can see all. Okay, are you ready? Okay, I want you to, for a couple of minutes, just think, close your eyes, and think about something that has haunted you. It could be a person, it could be a place, it could be a thing. Limit it to something tangible, not an idea or an ideology, but say something that has a concrete, corporeal thing to it, right? A thingness to it, okay? What haunted you? So I'm going to start asking you questions about this. You ready? If your ghost were to wear a color, what would it wear and where would you see it? If your ghost were to wear a color, what would it wear and where would you see it? If your ghost were to wear a color, what would it wear and where would you see it? If your ghost appeared at the sound of a song from your childhood, what song is it? Where are you hearing that song? If your ghost were to appear to a song from your childhood, where are you hearing that song? Where are you encountering it? In an elevator, in a car, from someone passing by on the street, you can hear it through their headphones. But where are you hearing that song? And what does it do to you when you hear that song? Sure. So if your ghost were to appear to you with a song from your past, what is that song? Name it. And where are you hearing that song? Are you all of a sudden in the grocery store holding an artichoke and then all of a sudden bye 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 comes over the loudspeakers and you think, oh my God, I'm taken back to when I'm 14 years old? Or you're walking down the sidewalk and somebody who's playing something too loud over their iPods, it projects as you pass right by them and you hear it, and it's a sharp sound, but it whips you back into a moment. What is that moment? Where are you encountering that song? if your ghost wore something with a particular texture, where are you experiencing that texture? Is it a silk scarf that is draped over a piece of furniture? Where are you experiencing that texture or that sensation of touch? Is it a whisker from a cat that glances your elbow? Or is it a dog brushing his sides against your leg as he runs in from the outside? What is that texture? What is that sensation? What is that feeling? Is it a pair of corduroys? Think of texture. Think of the sensation of touch. Plenty of spaces over here. If your ghost has a particular odor or smell that triggers a memory, what is the odor or smell? Is it something that your mother cooked for you long time ago? Is it the smell of your hometown? Is it the smell or odor of petrichor after a very, very dry month? Suddenly the rains return. What is that smell that summons your ghost? What is the smell that summons your ghost? If the world were ending and this was the last night on earth and your ghost offered to buy you dinner, where would they take you? If the world were ending and the ghost offered to buy you dinner, where would they take you? What would you order? Or do you have a bossy ghost they order for you? Tell that guy off. Take a couple minutes. Okay. How was this? Not bad? Yeah, you got stuff done? That's good to hear. I want to hear some of these. So I would love, say, a volunteer to give me what they wrote about smell. Does anyone have anything that they wrote about smell that you're willing to share? And if you're shy, I understand. Yeah.
I gotta say, that I had a hard time finding something corporeal
Yeah.
because when I write, it's usually not about corporeal things. But I finally came up with something, and I'll skip all that. And so the smells that I came up with is the smell of fresh air, sea, Irish soda bread, and Irish whiskey.
Irish soda bread and Irish whiskey, the smells of air and the sea. I'm transported. Absolutely. Yeah, wonderful. Somebody else had something up there. Yeah?
I wrote Lemon Pledge,
Lemon Pledge.
and actually I can't think about Lemon Pledge without, and of course smelling Lemon Pledge, but also the sound as my mother
Right.
dispensed it on the counter.
Yeah, so, and my mom used to do that too with the lemon pledge. She would just smear it all over whatever appliance. And I actually think it's not, it makes it makes it more dusty, right? Yes, but that is also a sound and a smell that haunts me. One other with the smell? Yeah.
So like the smell of like a brand new life, like the top of a baby's head.
Ah, yes.
Before it's been like formula, before it is anything other than just like this brand new creature.
There's a particular smell that you smell from a newborn, right? And it's very palpable and also haunting. Like you know it when you smell it, right? You know it when you smell it. How about the song that you heard? I'm curious about what you came up with. Yeah, you had your hand up.
I wrote a little bit.
Okay.
I said, CDs are but a memory, lost to the depths of this new temple. In them one played my favorite song, Jerry on repeat. Or on the strips down in Nashville, windows flung open for all to view.
Oh, wow. Wonderful. That's great. Anyone else with a song? Yeah.
It would be Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles.
Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles. That's great. Yeah. Did you have one too? There's something in the way, which, like, I hear that and I immediately think of the Batman movies for some reason. Anyone have a touch or a sensation of texture that you came up with? Yeah.
Buckles on a messenger bag slung over the shoulder, the crippled shoulder, and the collarbone. The buckles come up against my skin, my chest, and a crisp, rut.
Ouch. But I can feel that, right? That's a really, really great descriptive image. Yeah.
I wrote if my ghost were to brush against me, it would feel like rug burn on my knees when I was a kid, playing at being an animal and cruising along the carpet. Or it would feel like violet paint applied so thickly it never quite dries.
Violet paint applied so thickly it never quite dries. I can feel that texture. It's kind of like muddy. Yeah, that's great. Anyone else? Yes.
I have a few from the folks in the chat. So
Yeah.
we have a horse's muzzle.
A horse's muzzle.
We have a tweed coat.
A tweed coat.
The prickly pear fuzz on my fingers.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. See, I mean, we can be haunted by our bodies, right? And the things that we perceive with our bodies. Smell? Anyone? Sense of smell? Yeah? You have one? I know. Oh, did I? Oh my God. Did I say I can't keep track of things? Oh, I did the texture. Color. Thank you. See, you're all teaching this class for me. Yeah. Color. Yeah.
I feel like my ghost would be on a big stage wearing the most flamboyant, fancy red dress.
A red dress.
The extra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
announcing themselves. I'm here. I'm here. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. Uh huh. Mm-hmm. Camouflage in the middle of a flooded field. I can see it. Yeah. You had one too? Mm. Black when their eyes begin to adjust. Yeah. Someone else? Anyone from over here? Okay. Did I get everybody? Do I do taste? Anyone have a taste? That's fine. Okay. Now, you've all written notes. Am I right?
You want to taste?
Yes, give me a taste.
PD single malt whiskey.
Peaty single malt whiskey. And you had soda bread, and for sure we had some taste over there too. Okay, ready? You've all done this writing. I'm going to ask you to do something slightly painful. Okay? Read over all that you've written, and now write a 5-word image that pulls that all in. 5-word image. What does that mean? Okay, so for example, you would give me something like the stars over the mill. Something very simple. Or the shack at the seashore. Something that sort of locates where these things are coming from. Something that embodies where these things are coming from. But you're simplifying it into something very concrete and small. Okay? You understand my instructions? So you're going to take all this information that you've collected from writing about the sensory, and I'm going to have you do something that is the opposite of writing big. I'm going to have you write small. See if you can do that. Take a couple minutes to do this, because this is also hard. Keep it down to 5 words. 5 words. Adjust this. Folks need more time? Okay. Okay. Finish up. All right. I want to hear some of these. 5-word image that you generated from this ghost exercise. Anyone have a 5-word image that you could share with me? Yeah. Steam rising from oversteeped tea. And what did you associate with that particular image? Was it like a person or somebody from your past? Or yeah, that's a great image. Yeah. Who else? Yeah. Blue-green body in the chimney stove. Ooh, what was that about? I worry. Great. That's a great image, though. Very vivid. Others. Other 5-word images. Yeah.
Lavender gravy, cheap pajamas,
Lavender gravy, cheap pajamas anniversary. It's like a gift that somebody, is that?
It's actually about the end of someone's life.
Oh, okay. Wow. Lavender gravy. It's interesting textural too. Yeah. Others. Yeah.
Soft linen
Soft linen
shroud of Ireland.
shroud of Ireland. Yes. Anyone else? Yeah.
So I thought of something that haunted me, like you referred to before, and I think that I sort of took the interpretation that the eyes are the gateway to the soul.
Sure.
So mine were the eyes with no soul.
The eyes with no soul. Is that right? That's great. And you had one too?
Lemony dust and mom cries.
Lemony dust and mom cries. I see like this is the opening of a scene, right? Yeah. These are great. Anyone else? One other? Yeah.
Amazing Grace Gold teardrop
Amazing Grayskull teardrop
earrings.
earrings. It's like He-Man from Grayskull. No, there's like this. I'm the child of the '80s. There was like this cartoon, and this action figure called He-Man, and there was this basically this cast. I'm going on a tangent. You know what I'm talking about, right? Okay.
That's before my time.
Yeah. Oh, man. Talk about getting haunted all of a sudden.
Oliver, do you want a couple from the
Yeah, I would love some from the chat. Yeah.
Okay, we got, oh, if I can just have the mic on, then the chat will hear that we're sharing their stuff. We have moldering cornmeal.
I do that?
Yep.
Here we go. Thanks. Moldering cornmeal coarse paper hoard.
Hmm.
That's a mouthful right there. Your hug dimpled bursting pride. We have former Nabisco factory, Northeast Philly.
Oh, wow. That's very particular.
That is. We love a locational ghost.
Yes.
Tuxedo ghost Downs black pie.
Tuxedo Ghost Downs Black Pie.
There are about 180 more.
I love it. I love it. Fantastic. So the reason that I had you do this is, did you find that it was harder to consolidate and make a single 5-word image after you spent all this time sort of drilling down all these sensory writings here and there, right? It was harder to sort of just narrow it down. I think that sometimes when we think about writing from maybe being haunted, we also write from like a place of obsession, right? I think that being haunted and also writing from obsession are sort of parallel tracks. And I think that you engage a topic in multiple ways, right? So on the one hand, I had you sort of engage in a sprawling way in the opening exercise where I'm having you engage in the 5 senses, and then I'm sort of having you retract and think smaller and think in a more compartmentalized way. Now the next assignment that I'm going to have you do is an assignment that I'm going to have you take away from here, right? And then we'll move on to some of the readings. This assignment that you're going to take home with you is to take this 5-word image that you've just written and start maybe 5 or 6 poems with that line. Start a couple more poems with that line. And lo and behold, you have a sequence. And lo and behold, you have the start of something. Something that can and will haunt you, that you're going to be writing for a while. If you want to up the level of difficulty, I'm going to make a suggestion. Okay, are you ready? You ready for this level of difficulty increase? Okay, it's going to be a sonnet, because I love the sonnet for some reason. How did you know that was going to happen? I don't know. You're going to carry on this assignment for a total of 13 days after this. So when you go home, don't write anything. But tomorrow, write one line underneath that particular line that you came up with. Come back to it the next day. Write one line underneath that. Come back to it the following day, etc. Until you have a sonnet. See what happens. How does your mind work around this particular topic? Does it focus on the motif that you've established, that you've created? Does it want to move away from it? That's also information to you, right, as a writer. The compulsion to steer away from a particular topic might actually veer you towards other characters, other moments that are part of this bigger sequence that you might be working on. So invite that in, right? If you feel compelled to move away from that idea, maybe you're just extending the topic a little bit further, okay? So let's take a couple of looks at some poems that deal with the senses, and this is Fatima Asghar's poem, Smell is the Last Memory to Go. Hopefully this works. There it is. Okay, this is from the Poetry Foundation's website, and this is a poem entitled Smell is, oh, are you not seeing it on the screen? Nope. Oh. Huh? You see me, which is like kind of embarrassing. I have so many bad angles too. I'll just read it aloud, and then for those of you who have the handouts, share it with people around you. Smell is the last memory to go. On my block, a gate. On my block, a tree smelling of citrus and jasmine that knocks me back into the arms of my dead mother. I ask Ross, how can a tree be both jasmine and orange? On my block, my neighbors put up gates and stare, don't like to share. On my block, a tree I can't see but can smell. A tree that can't be both but is. On my block, my mother's skirts twirls, and all I smell is her ghost. Perfume on my block, a fallen orange smashed into sidewalk, its blood pulped on asphalt on my block. Jordan hands me a jasmine. By the time I get home, all its petals are gone. So I'm sorry you can see this, but I will tell you that it's arranged in couplets, and the way that it sort of moves through the poem is very deliberate. She uses, Fatima Asghar uses a lot of enjambment, so she breaks her lines at really abrupt times in the sentence. And that's sort of giving this idea that the speaker, whomever this is delaying or is haunted by the sensation of the jasmine or the citrus that they're smelling. But here's the other thing. There we go. Yay! Here's the other thing that's happening, that the speaker can't actually see the physical tree, right? They can't see the tree. I'll read it again now that you have it here. Yes. How's that? Smell is the last memory to go by Fatima Asghar. On my block, a gate. On my block, a tree smelling of citrus and jasmine that knocks me back into the arms of my dead mother. I ask Ross, how can a tree be both jasmine and orange? On my block, my neighbors, put up gates and stare, don't like to share. On my block, a tree I can't see, but can smell. A tree that can't be both, but is on my block. My mother's skirt twirls, and all I smell is her ghost. Perfume on my block. A fallen orange smashed into sidewalk. Its blood pulped on asphalt on my block. Jordan hands me a jasmine. By the time I get home, all its petals are gone. What are you hearing? What are some of the things that you see or sense? Yeah. 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 Right. It's almost like, so we're, you remember test taking and making up mnemonic devices, right, as a way to sort of memorize things. And here we have a speaker who is obsessively repeating the phrase on my block, on my block. This is happening on my block. So we are having a locus. The speaker is sort of putting us in a place or positioning positioning us in a place while this other sensory thing is happening, which is the sense of smell that we cannot actually attribute to anything. There's a smell that she's smelling, which reminds her of her mother, but it's from this tree that she has no access to. She can't get to that tree. She can't go to that tree. And so she's haunted literally by this smell, the pervading odor of this perfume of jasmine and orange that is sort of a blend of the two sensations. And she's trying to sort of hold on to it, but she can't have access to it. She's denied access to it. It's a remarkable poem that deals with the scent. Let's try another one. This is, again, smell. Let's look at Kwame Dawes' Purple. And you can see this, yes? I'll read it. I don't know how the sound is going to carry over. Kwame Dawes for Akua. This is called Purple. Walking, I drew my hand over the lumpy bloom of a spray of purple. I stripped away my finger, stained purple, put it to my nose, the minty honey, a perfume so aggressively pleasant. I gave it to you to smell, my daughter, and you pulled away as if I was giving you a palmful of wasps. Deceptions. Smell the way the air changes because of purple and green. This is the promise I make to you. I will never give you a fistful of wasps, just the surprise of purple and the scent of rain. It's a beautiful poem, isn't it? But it's interesting how deliberate this poem is shaped. So we look at it, and he's writing it in tercets or lines of three. And it's sort of moving slowly, cascading along. And what we have is, of course, this father sharing a moment with his daughter, but then it turns into an oath, right? That the daughter recoils. It's like, this is too smelly. But the father is saying, hey, look, you're going to remember this smell. I'm going to have you remember it, and I'm going to have you remember this moment because it's my vow, it's my oath. Maybe even when I'm long gone as a ghost, this idea will haunt you. I will never give you a fistful of wasps, just the surprise of purple and the scent of rain. And let's close with one more poem about smell, and this is from Aisha Reyes. And the title of this poem is All Along I Laid Halved. And think about like how the speaker's obsessing about place and where they are. The lake was, all along, a reservoir. My third grade trip was to a dam. All along, I wore nothing but hand-me-down sweaters. I grow at the mercy of my mother every time I height at the mercy of someone else. When I put my forehead on the floor 5 times a day, it will be game over. My third grade self played squash. My third grade self could have continued playing squash. A child is an investment to a future because now, 26, fat, drenched, dreaming of figure skating, I can't even sit straight. I look out of windows. Do you know what a country smells like? Not home, never home, all along. Not me. Smells like teen spirit. Smells like sweat mustache. Smells like mercy lighting up a dam. Every sleep I was consumed by a bonfire. No music, no dance. I don't hate it here. I don't hate it anywhere. But it's hard hearing my mother cry on the toilet. It's hard hearing the winter knock up New York. It's hard breathing in smog and realizing all along it was Lahore. All along it was just me. But did I even know? In third grade, I ate a whole box of chalk. In third grade, I witnessed a free pigeon return to where it was homed. In third grade, they found me without proof at the squash court, hustled. I only know ill. I only know mercy. God, have mercy. I spend my day shifting light bulbs to create company with my shadow. I spend my day resting halved in warmth and shade. I know what it will take to not burn me, but I do not step out of the house, and the house never steps out of me. What a powerful poem. There's only just a little bit of scent, sort of, that it's only a little bit of scent that sort of pervades this, and it's sort of in the middle. Do you know what a country smells like? Which I think is the provocative question that she asks, right? That so much of it is, okay, this is a person who's sort of coming into their own, trying to figure out who they are. But then we have the question, do you know what a country smells like? And it changes the dynamic of the poem. The poem becomes much more, haunting, right? It becomes more haunted. And so we have a lot of these moments. Did you guys notice some of these like strange repetitions? Yeah.
I'm just thinking a lot about what you said at the beginning about scent is one of our strongest sensory
Yeah.
memories. And so every time you smell French fries, you think of home.
Yeah.
It's very pervasive thing.
Right.
And this juxtaposing of, do you know what a country smells like, with later, I don't hate it here, I don't hate
Yes.
it here. This idea that home is obsession, whether you like it or not. Part of you will always be obsessed with this
Right.
place that you come from. It kind of leads in.
Right. Right. We're all from somewhere. And oftentimes, whether we like it or not, we will return to that someplace, right? And I think this is a speaker who's returning to this. It's triggered by the smell or the question about smell. And they can't let it go, right? It keeps coming back. And we know that they can't let it go because of how this particular poet chooses to write in parentheses all along, right? These repetitions that she threads throughout this, they're sort of braided in a way that we understand this speaker is haunted. They're thinking about this over and over again. It's a recurring idea that they can't let go. And so we see this like this moment of the speaker, just like here again, I don't hate it here, I don't hate it here, the repetition all along it was just me. Those sorts of things are telling you as a reader, this is a person who can't let go, is just constantly returning to the past. Yeah. I think, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think, yes, it is an immigration poem. We're not sure whether or not this is the speaker who immigrated or that they are just displaced, right? But there's an interesting start of the poem, which is the lake was, parentheses, all along a reservoir. In other words, it's not a lake. This is something constructed. It's constructed by a dam, and what does a dam do? It basically diverts a body of water. So what we're doing, or what we're seeing is, here we have a speaker saying, all along I laid halved. This speaker's identity is halved, that they are not a whole person, and they're starting to acknowledge that and understand that, oh, I'm seeing this reservoir, which in my young days I thought it was a lake. It's not. And I'm beginning to understand it and see better. And all along these things, I'm beginning to go back to my past and understand or contextualize what it is that I'm seeing. So these things are haunting her. She's being haunted. These images of this field trip, these images of other places, now she's starting to understand, oh, well, these are all related things. And so we have these really interesting sequences, like where she has like these really brief sentences. In third grade, they found me, period, without proof, period, at the squash court, period, hustled. These hesitations are really interesting and sort of suggest to me somebody who's like, contemplating, can't move forward. There's a particular type of retraction that's happening. Yeah, really interesting. Let's move forward, and I'll take a sample from some of these other pieces. Let's take a look at taste. What do you want? Taste or touch? Let's hear it from the. You want touch? Okay. You want both. We want all of the senses. Let's look at Leela Chatty. And this is a poem entitled, After Touching You, I Think of Narcissus Drowning. After touching you, I think of Narcissus drowning. How desire is a thing I might die for. Longing, a well, a long dark throat. Enter any body of water, and you give yourself up to be swallowed. Even the stones know that. I have writhed against you as if against the black bottom of a deep pool. I have emerged from your grip, breathless and slicked. How easily I could forget you as separate. So essential you feel to me now. You beneath me like my own blue shadow. You silent as the moon drifts like a petal across your skin, my mouth to your lip. You a spring I return to, unquenchable, and drink. It's a sexy poem, right? It's great, but texture. Let's talk about what Leela Chatty is doing here with her texture. I think one of the things that I want to point out to you, aside from her great descriptive qualities, is that she is utilizing the formal construction of the couplet to emphasize texture. That's really kind of a neat trick, that if you want to think about how we emphasize our sensory experiences, think about form and how that comes across in this case. So she's using these couplets, she's enjamming, and then she's really delivering sort of with slowness a sensory, sensual kind of experience, right? If, say, this poem were jammed up as, say, a compressed single stanza structure, what would our experience be? Different, right? It wouldn't be the same. So I think what is really intriguing for us writers as people who are thinking about craft is how she approaches the slowness of touch, the tactile quality. So you silent as the moon, line break, stanza break, drifts like a petal, enjambment across your skin, my mouth, stanza break to your lip, you a spring, enjambment, I return to, unquenchable, and drink. So she's really making use of the silence that happens with those enjambed lines and those big stanza breaks to emphasize the texture, right? Like you're feeling it, you're sensing it, you're experiencing it. That's a great poem. Let's look at hearing. Here's a poem by my good friend Jeffrey Davis. It's called Hear the Light. And it's a bit of a longer poem. But let's think about how he utilizes sound here. And this is, again, all to give you folks a sense of how these various writers entangle with the sensory as a way to talk about memory, right? Essentially, when we're talking about haunting or this idea of haunting, we're also talking about memory and accessing the memories. All right, Hear the Light by Jeffrey Davis at the Giant Heart, the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, PA. Today, the boy won't rest long enough for me to burn a single metaphor back to whether precision or prayer leavens the language I need cast into the well of our survival. And then the boy urges my turn to stay poised on a floor scale while watching 24 chilling cups of hurt-colored liquid spill into a clear cylinder. The gutted window to the privacy of blood harbored in this body thins the daily belief that no sick imaginary could cut us full open. And then the boy gawks around a carousel of animal hearts, fidgets against his surprise at the smallness of the lion's carnal engine beside the cow's. Before I can weigh the unchambered bellows of hunger, the boy begins to sound a panel that plays the pulse of each animal. He doesn't linger with a blood music. He keeps mashing buttons at random from the canary's constant lift to the cavernous crawl of the blue whale until I can't see living inside a god rhythm that soothes this earthly cacophony, pleading toward the dark effort of tomorrow. By now, I have a strange image for a heart filling my mouth. I'm remembering the tiny fleshy pyramids my own father cleaned from sunfish when they ceased their tight contractions. I strained to recognize the hardness in his hand, sometimes pressing down into the soft plunge of his palm to witness one last lunge. This memory dissolves because the boy dashes off, and then I'm chasing him through the beating corridors of a giant vascular room. The way is dim and narrow. I'm working hard to keep up. I'm trying not to lose the boy inside the heart. But every time I hear the light of his laughter murmur across another distance, I breathe into the new blessing his life has kindled from the space between us. I think I could survive like this all day. Beautiful. But like, here we take this, the boy sort of pressing these buttons and hearing all these various animal hearts. And it sends the speaker, it sort of serves as a way to sort of hook the speaker into a memory of the past. And he recalls this moment when fishing with his father, seeing a sunfish and its heart. And so we have, again, how the various senses sort of bring us from one moment, a particular moment, into another moment. I'm going to close with sight, and then we'll get to one more exercise, and then I'm going to give you some revision exercises as a bonus, because I know that your time is valuable, and I value your time. Let's take a look at Rachel Eliza Griffiths. And I think this poem is interesting because Rachel is a photographer, and so she thinks about how things look all the time. Seeing the Body by Rachel Eliza Griffiths. Not hers, but mine. Not hers ever again, ever hers. My body pulled through, 2 long windows open in the dark of birth, the gold cord raised too in its wake. Awake, the first morning. The first morning, and all the windows were closed inside. A blindness scalding, broken sight. The silence pulled through my nostrils and veins, the ether of air failing flesh. I get up from the shape I once was and open the white blinds in my brother's house. The light is specific. It is the 29th morning of July. Last night, they dragged me howling from her body in the room. The room had a name. Number 3315 in the cardiac wing. In the room, I saw her winged shape leave, rise, forgive the vessel that fled her. Now mine or ours, I stare in the mirror while everyone sleeps, the grieved sleep of the living. Behind my eyes, a dead woman looks back at me with no trace of recognition. I say, "Mother," and my own feral mouth opens, closes without any light. I think this is a fairly self-explanatory poem, but I think, it's amazing how visceral this particular poem is, because yes, the thing that triggers the memory is the vision, the sight, but then what we feel are other parts of our senses. We have a smell, we have hearing, and all of those other experiences. Okay. And as a reminder, I know that there's a sign up out there that has your emails. I have this particular handout that I will send to you if you put your name on the email. So you'll have access to all the poems that are here that we're not going over. All right. So here we go. This is the last exercise that I'm going to leave you with, and then I'm going to shift to ideas of revision that also open up with this idea of haunting or being haunted. So what I want you to do is read through all of these poems from the packet, right? Each of them derives its composition from a specific sense, but what I'd like you to do is write a series of poems from those particular senses as well. So maybe you will write a poem about smell, sight, taste, touch, hearing, each of them. And the other things that I want you to do is, if you can, use that 5-word image that I had you guys write down. Think about that as a way to sort of give you an extra challenge. Okay? So again, take in some of these poems that are in this handout that you will be getting at some point in your inboxes, and write a poem for each of the senses and see, I think it would be ideal if you could stay on the same topic, right? Give that, make that be your extra challenge, if you will. Okay? Cool. Any questions before I transition into revision exercises that I want you to take away from this class? Happy to answer anything. AMA, ask me anything. No? Okay. Let's move on to revision. So, this is a series or sequence of exercises that can help you expand. Once you've written a poem, they'll help you expand what exactly that poem is or what that poem can be, right? And I call this 13 things to do with the poem you've already written. Pretty basic. As a poet, sometimes I'm just not very imaginative. Okay. These are all great exercises. I think you should try them at some point. They may seem silly at first, but trust me, they work. So the first revision exercise, I'm going to zoom in, is called the photographic negative. So, for example, if you were writing a poem that is tonally one direction, you write its opposite. So, can you see this? Everybody can see this? So, for example, if you wrote a poem of the tone of grief, the next poem or the companion poem will be joy, right? And so you imagine these poems as a pair. You imagine these poems as a matched set. They may go different places in, say, this manuscript that you are devising, but in a way they carry on the same narrative arc, right? So think of the photographic negative, the poem's opposite. Okay, this is a very difficult assignment that I have done in the past. It's called Looking Under the Hood. And I'll read the description and sort of explain it. Well, the car looks good. It's clean. The tires have air in them. But what really makes it run? You're assuming there's an engine in there and that all the wires are connected and that all the spark plugs are sparking. But look under the hood. With that, would you buy a car without taking a peek? So what this particular exercise has you do is after you've written a poem, triple space it. Triple space it. And then in between each of those spaces, you're going to write 2 lines that explains the line that you've written. Explains it in oftentimes prosaic ways. The other permutation of this assignment is to extend the poem. So after you've triple spaced it, try to fill in more details, right? But I think you'll find that this is a good way to sort of figure out what it is that you're doing in the poems. Like, what am I trying to do here with these particular lines? How are these lines operating? How are these lines working? And it's a good way to sort of check yourself, right? Okay. The waterfall. I say it's an ambitious extension of Looking Under the Hood, but I think that this is a generative way to create more work, okay? Let's say that you wrote a sonnet. Again, I like the sonnet for some reason. Let's say you wrote a sonnet. Now, what you're going to do with that sonnet is you're going to take each of those 14 lines as individual lines, and you're going to put them on a piece of paper. So line 1 is going to be on a piece of paper, line 2 is going to be on a piece of paper, etc., all the way down to line 14. Then what you're going to do is you're going to write a line underneath it, each of those lines. So you're creating new work, you're creating more work from the work that you've already generated. I have done this. It can be catastrophic, but it can also generate some really interesting and new work. So try it. Give it a try. This is just merely an exercise in determining whether or not your noun-adjective combinations are working. It's called the football shift. And so basically what you do is take 2 pieces of paper, put your nouns on one side, put your adjectives on another side, and you shift them around. What happens? Do you need those adjectives? Are those adjectives working for you? Are they of any purpose to you? Can this work without those adjectives? Are they just being, overly decorous, etc.? So it's called the football shift, and it's a good way to check on whether or not your descriptive adjectives are functional, right? It's an editing trick. Okay. This is an exercise called the return trail. And what this is basically you're reading your original poem from the bottom up. From the bottom up. How many of you struggle with endings in your poems? Yeah? A lot of you struggle with endings. So I think what ends up happening is we save all the stuff that we want to get to for the ending, right? So by doing this return trail exercise, what you're doing is you're putting the stuff that you were trying to get to in the poem at the top of the poem, and then determining whether or not the body of the poem has made its way to that information. It's also a good way to sort of realize that the tension never really was the stuff that you got to at the end. It really made more sense to have that information at the top. So try it. You'll find that sometimes your best poems are better backwards, right? And I'm going through these quickly, I know. You're going to get all of this stuff. Okay, so there are multiple ways to do this particular exercise. This is called translating your work. On the back of the paper of the poem that you've written, write in the plainest, most boring language what your poem is doing. What does it mean? What's happening? Don't be poetic, just be very straightforward. The other way that you can do this, which is not here, I'm going to tell you, is to do the following. You ready? It's going to require you to use Google Translate. Okay? Cut your poem out, paste it into Google Translate, and translate your poem from English to a language that you don't know. Okay? Take that poem or that result and translate it to another language you don't know, and then translate it back into English. What happens? What does the computer algorithm do to your poem? Oftentimes it's doing this flattening of your language. See what happens. See what kind of thing the algorithm does. It's a good way to sort of determine whether or not you're being clear, surprisingly. So give that a try. All right. The next exercise is called relax. Relax. And it's basically putting your poems out of their work clothes and into their lounging around clothes, making prose poems. Get rid of the line breaks. See what happens when you rid yourself of the line breaks, and determine whether or not it was the line breaks that was really making the poem a poem. Sometimes it is not the line breaks and it's something else. Sometimes maybe it isn't a poem. Maybe it's a short. Maybe it's an essay. But give it a try. All right. You guys following along? You okay? I know it's hot and I know it's the afternoon and we're feeling very tired. But I promise you this is almost over. These two exercises work back to back. This one is called the day before and the next one is called the rest of the story. But essentially it works as follows. You've written a poem. Place that poem at the center of a timeline. The day before asks you to write a poem that occurs before that particular event happens. And the day after, write about the aftermath of that event. Why? Well, sometimes the drama of a poem isn't really the source of the drama of the poem. And it's a way for you to determine whether or not that particular thing that created that drama was truly the source. So try this particular timeline structure. Also, it's a good way to write more poems, right? Yeah. Okay. Learning your lines. There was a wonderful poet by the name of Jane Shore She did this for one of her manuscripts, and basically what she did was she took a poem or a series of poems that she had written, cut the lines individually out, placed them into a paper bag, right? This is a whole book manuscript that Jane Shore did, by the way. And she, one at a time, pulled them from that paper bag and repasted them into new poems. And she published that book. But yes, it's a thing that you can do. So basically what you can do is take a bunch of poems that you've written, cut out their individual lines, put them in a paper bag, and draw them out and see if you can create new combinations. It's playful. It's very much like magnetic poetry in a way, right? A lot of this is more revision exercises. Be the audience, have somebody read the poem to you cold, which can be terrifying and embarrassing. But if you are reacting to somebody reading your poem to you and you're making this face, that's feedback, right? That's good feedback. It tells you something. It's like there's something that's bothering you. If that something is bothering you and making you or causing you to make that face, you need to go back and fix it. Switch the camera is a fiction writing trick. It's where you change the POV from first to third to second, etc. It's a good way to sort of determine whether or not the poem is better at 100 feet versus 10,000 feet, right? Intimacy versus objectivity. And then the final exercise is this poem is classified, which is erasure. For a time, you saw a whole lot of these blackout poems. They're not a cool thing anymore, but let me tell you that they're really good for revision exercises. So go ahead and try to do this. Take a poem, take a black marker, and try to blot out some of the pieces and craft a new poem. And the last piece of advice that I leave for you is don't discount any of these exercises. Try them all. Thinking that it won't work is different from knowing that they won't work. Okay? So that leaves us with a few minutes. I'm here to answer questions. I'm here to offer any advice. I'm here. Do you have any questions for me? Anything that you want to ask me? Yeah. Oh, sure. Oh, sure. Yes.
Hi.
Yes. Hi.
Okay. Could you go back to the football shift?
Yes. Here we are.
Adjectives and was it adverbs?
Adjectives and nouns.
And nouns. Can you like just explain that again with the
Sure. Okay. So let's say you have your nouns on this side and your adjectives on this side. Okay. Car, blue. You shift the car away from the blue and it gets paired with another adjective. Okay? You plop that into a poem. What happens? Is the color superfluous? Does it matter? Is it important? Does it determine what happens in the poem? I think that's a good way to test whether or not these adjectives that we pair with our nouns are actually functional or are decorative. Yeah? So that's all that is. It's really more of an editing technique or an editing trick. I do that sometimes when I feel like I'm stuck, when I feel like I'm being a little too baroque with my descriptive detail. I have a tendency to go on and on. So this is something that I do as a way to sort of cut things. Yeah. Did that make sense? That answer your question?
Thank
Great.
you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
The poems that you were reading were wonderful.
Great.
And I can't remember which one, but had maybe a couple of them had really interesting line breaks.
Yes.
And that they didn't, like a line didn't end, or even like a verse didn't end when I would think it would,
Mm-hmm.
but it would go on into
Mm-hmm.
like a big line break, and then
Yeah.
like the sentence wouldn't end at the sentence.
Right.
And I'm always I always struggle with how to do that in
Yeah.
my own poetry. And I was wondering if you had any exercises or suggestion how to play with lines.
Sure. So I have a spiel when it comes to lines and line breaks. That in poetry, what I always tell myself is that a line break has to do three things. One, it has to create narrative drama. It has to create sonic drama, and it has to create narrative drama, sonic drama, and visual drama, right? So that there is a particular kind of suspense that is created from those line breaks. A lot of these poets are really dramatic. So let's look at Fatima Ashkar, for example. She uses a lot of enjambment and a lot of line breaks, but for the most part, it's very formally conservative, right? She's using couplets, but then she's breaking. How can a tree break be both jasmine and orange? Let's also look at this moment here, which is sort of the payoff. I'm going to get to it here, 1 second. Me back into the arms of my dead, line break, stanza break, mother. So she's using the couplet form and these really, really jagged enjambments to create one, their suspense. Me back into the arms of my dead. My dead. Mother. So she's holding or withholding that information into that next stanza, and that creates tension. As a reader, I'm like, I want to know what happens next. So, form and the formality or the formations of some of these line structures are intentional, and they are creating drama and dramatic effect. They're also, in this particular poem, it's a way for her to sort of delay and create a particular type of pacing and manipulate time. Yeah? So, line breaks are really, really interesting, and they can really shape how you as a reader are perceiving what's happening. Yeah. Now, how do I know when to do it? You got to read your poems aloud. Like, as you're writing them, I think that the one big practice that you should do is just read it aloud. And if you feel like there's a way that you can create drama by breaking something, do it.
I noticed, though, like one of the poems you read, it was maybe the last one you read, the way you read it wasn't how we saw it. Like, you read it sort of by the, like it made sense by the sentence.
Yeah.
But then it changed when you saw it. It was, I think, in triplets or...
Oh, so it was Jeffrey Davis's
Yes.
poem. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So if we look at that, and he's in tercets, right? Very, very deliberate form, right? The form is telling us one particular thing, that it is very, very regimented, it's very, very shaped. But the fact that he is breaking and spilling his sentences over so that his syntax is interrupted tells us something else, right? On the one hand, there's like a particular type of pace or measurement of time that he's demonstrating with his very, very rigid tercets. But then what he's doing is he's going against that measurement of time. So there's an interruption. And that interruption has a lot to do with him chasing his son down the hallways. He's like, here we are doing these things that are supposed to happen, but oh my God, my son just took off. He's running away from me, which is also symbolic of this memory that is chasing me too. So here we have, again, a very organized visually. The structure is visual and very organized, but the contents are not. Like, the contents are just kind of running on into each other. So there's something happening here that creates tension, right? We're expecting a very calm delivery from these tercets. That's not what happens. We're chasing this kid down the hallway. Yeah.
I had a tool recommendation based on the question you just asked. that is also kind of a continuation of your translation prompt. A really interesting website is called the Cut Up Machine. It's most helpful if you write a series, basically stream of consciousness, but complete sentences. You'll then paste in whatever you wrote, and it'll completely randomize the order of the words. It's different every time you do it, and I mean, it definitely requires a lot of like patience and editing, but I find that that can be a really interesting way both to handle line breaks and language, because it'll pair words that you didn't anticipate, and it'll also like allow you to visualize words that might match in a weird way and cut a line there. Anyway,
The cut up machine.
the cut up
One
machine.
word.
The cut up machine, like
Okay.
.org or com or something.
I'm
Google
gonna
the
check
cut
it
up
out.
machine, you'll find it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. Thank you so much. That's cool. Somebody else had their hand up. Yeah, over there.
I thought your 13 revision exercises were so helpful.
Great.
I had a general question for you about subtext. Like, do you have any advice about how to, just to, like think about the work in terms of the text and subtext? Because my problem is, just saying things too on the nose. And so in theory, I know that a lot of the lines that I come up with, like I'll figure out that I was just trying to get to this line or this image. But do you have advice about how to approach this problem?
Oh my gosh, that is the problem of writing poetry, right? That like we all in the room know that a poem is not just one, it doesn't mean one thing. It means multiple things, and oftentimes there's striations of things, layers of multiple things. I think that you come upon the depth of a topic through revision, right? And through living with a poem for a while. So that, there's this idea called the palimpsest, which is like basically you paint over an image and you keep painting over an image so that like there is something underneath that. But what that requires is that you put one layer of paint over it first, and then another layer of paint over it, and then another. And what do all of these things have in common? Time, right? I mean, I think that ultimately to get at the depth of the content or the subtext that you're getting at sometimes means that you have to live with a poem for a bit, and that you have to sort of develop a different type of relationship with it, or you write another poem adjacent to it, right? That don't let not achieving that subtext information stop you from writing the next poem. So my technique is that I write in sequences. What I often do is I write poem 1, poem 2, poem 3, poem 4, poem 5. I'm very painterly in that way. I think of poems in series and sequences. And what ends up happening is that I get to the subtext through accretion and accumulation, right? Also time, right? I mean, these are all ways that I come to or arrive at what I mean to say that is underneath the poem. Well, I get to it or I arrive at that conclusion after having lived with that poem or that work for a while. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, I mean, I would say this, that like there are many exercises that you can do to keep working. I think a lot of the revision exercises that I gave you offer opportunities to keep writing poems adjacent to your original work. And that's a way to maybe get it deeper meaning too. Yeah.
So I have a question about.
Oh, Mike.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
A question about putting a collection together.
Yeah.
I have a couple books, but I'm working on a new one. And when you're talking about like the palimpsest and the obsession and coming back to, I have trouble with sometimes ordering poems in a collection because, like, I don't want the reader to get bored. Like sometimes it's hard to decide. Am I obsessed with this? Am I looking at it from all these different ways, and are all the poems working? Or is this just, I keep coming back to the same thing, and because I haven't really written the best poem yet about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so.
Right.
And then do I mix up?
Yeah.
Do I sprinkle the poem
Yeah.
with that repeating
Yeah.
image or theme and throughout the book, or do I
Right.
put them together? And
Yeah. So you're haunted by a topic, right? Let's say that you are haunted by a topic. There is nothing wrong with being haunted by a topic. The question is, if I share what I am haunted with, will a reader continue to be interested in what it is that I'm doing? And there are a number of ways to approach this. One, write adjacent to that topic. What do I mean by that? Well, maybe there is a character that comes in and serves as, say, the Greek chorus for this conversation that you're having to put a different spin on it. Or write the anti-poem, the poem that is the opposite in terms of tone, as a way for you to sort of take another POV or a stance. Create a character who works or stands outside of that particular, topic, as a way for you to sort of gain context. These things may not land in the manuscript, but they may help you sort of put your work in context and determine whether or not a reader is going to want to go from left to right all the way through. I always have the propensity for overwriting. I know that. That is the thing that I do. I will write sequence after sequence after sequence. And what I end up doing is, since I'm very conscious of it, I know that I have to have interruptions. And so oftentimes what my interruptions consist of are forms. Right? I'll come in and I'll use a particular type of form, oftentimes a sonnet. I don't know why, but it's a good way to sort of turn or create or ground the moment. So think of maybe creating spinal poems that can function as road stops for your readers as well. There's a way to do that, right? Think of forms. Think of developing a form that'll stand as maybe a surrogate for the speaker. All kinds of opportunities. I think we're out of time. I see Brooke. Yeah, one more question.
I want to make sure we get at least one question
Yeah,
from our
yeah.
Zoom friends. So let's end with this one, Oliver.
Sure.
So, do you find that one sense tends to haunt you or your poems more than others?
Yes, my sense of smell. And I started with smell. I'll end with smell. I already told you about the Ore-Ida factory in my hometown. That is a very, very distinct smell. Anytime I smell it, I'm returned home. There's also the smell of sage, and sagebrush is a very, very indelible scent in my psyche. But it's always smell, and it always sort of locates me back in my hometown of Ontario, Oregon. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Oliver de la Paz. Can we give him a round of applause, everybody?
Thank you all. Thank you so much.